I would definitely describe our guest this hour as being unique from a political perspective because we normally think about people who are running for public office. They've been around for decades working behind the scenes in political machines, or they've spent other years serving on various committees and planning boards, and then they get involved in. They say in politics, yeah, you've paid your dues. I had a politician tell me one time when being challenged by a younger call it challenger that well, but it's not his turn. And I used to think you probably don't realize the public doesn't see it that way. I bring all of this up because Ed Humphreys, who's a candidate for governor in Idaho, announced his campaign just under a week ago. He's a Republican, and even though Brad Little has not announced he's running for reelection, we assume he is. So Mr. Humphreys is the first person to come along and say that he's going to be challenging the governor in a primary in 52 weeks. 6 minutes now after 7 o'clock. We're at 42. Bill Colley on News Radio 1310, KLIX, News Radio 1310.com, and 96.1 FM. Welcome to the program, sir.
Yes, Bill. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to get the chance to discuss the race and the campaign with you and with the folks here in the Magic Valley.
Well, we should point out you just didn't fall off a turnip truck. You have been involved in some Republican Party politics, even though you're relatively young compared to Governor Little. You could probably be his son, right? at this
Yeah.
stage. But you have had some work. You've been working within the party structure for at least some time.
Yeah, for only about a couple of years, really. A little bit over 2 years is when I first started getting involved, and I'd gotten involved because I'm a financial advisor, and I had clients that would discuss the economy and the markets with me, and they knew I was very conservative in my philosophy and outspoken about it, and they told me, you really ought to get more involved in the Republican Party. The Republican Party needs fresh new faces. And so it was my clients that really drug me into it. And I, at that time, I had seen how the local Republican Party was operating, and I just felt like it wasn't up to snuff. I felt like we could do a lot better. And so I participated in a series of party elections. So this isn't for public office, and won those elections, and it landed me on the executive board for the Idaho State Republican Party. So my first foray into the political realm kind of shot up and landed in a position where I could begin to meet with people and start to discuss some of my ideas and my vision.
I heard someone describe you yesterday as a self-made man, and we don't normally hear that of people under the age of 40 too often, but it speaks volumes. I think that obviously you've done something right in life if you've been able to get someone else to make that admission.
Yeah, I'm proud of where me and my wife are and where our family is. The reality, Bill, 13 years ago, I was living in a 26-foot Prowler travel trailer in a trailer park, right? And I had worked my way up, so I'd become a roughneck on drilling rigs, drilling for oil. And that's actually what introduced me to Idaho, because I was on drilling rigs in Colorado and Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota. And I first got introduced to Idaho Falls in 2013. I immediately fell in love with Idaho and moved to Idaho Falls soon thereafter. And that's where I ended up meeting my wife. And so Idaho's just a place that's always called to me. And I think what you're expressing or sharing, Bill, is people still love the idea of the American dream. That's part of our foundational philosophy in this country, and my story is representative of that dream. That you can elevate your station in life. And when I was a little boy, my mother immigrated to this country from Eastern Europe, and she cleaned hotel rooms and everything else, and worked in restaurants and everything else. And I would go with her, and my father worked on construction sites. And so I've been able to see in my lifetime my family really elevate their standard of living, that's also true for myself. And that's what I'm so deeply concerned about, is because the American dream is on the brink right now. And Idaho is at a crossroads. We have to recognize that a lot of this ideology, a lot of these philosophies we're hearing about now are completely antithetical to the American dream, the American way of life. And I want to stand firm for the American dream, because it's those principles that made this country the greatest nation on earth.
I got to mention, we were talking off air before, during the newscast, and I pointed out that part of the trouble for politics in Idaho and for the political parties is, and I assume it's the same for Democrats too, and even some of the other smaller parties, but it's to try to get young people involved. I mean, if you go to a committee meeting, you can walk around, and I find that I'm often the youngest person there, and I'm almost 60. So you said you wanted to address that, obviously, in this hour of the program, and I guess this is a good opportunity to sort of bring some attention to that.
It's an important, incredibly important issue that we have to understand as conservatives. If we can't successfully perpetuate our philosophy and our worldview, the Republican Party will die out. It's just the darn truth of the matter. And the only way you can change that is you have to bring in fresh new faces and voices into this America First, this patriot movement in this country. And and people like me will attract the younger generations, because they can look at someone like me and they can relate. But it's not only about, we gotta bring young people in. The reality is, this is part of the problem that needs to be fixed in the Republican Party. We often forget what the story of America is, and this nation was founded by young men with a vision. I mean, 19 of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were in their 20s and 30s. Thomas Jefferson was 33 years old when he crafted and authored that document. So we've grown away from our roots. Our philosophy, our ideology is one that is eternally optimistic, hopeful, and energetic. And we need to bring zeal into everything we do to overcome this spiritual battle that we're in right now as a state here in Idaho, and as a country.
I just wanted to mention to anyone just tuning in, we're speaking with Ed Humphreys this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and 96.1 FM. He is a candidate for governor in Idaho, running as a Republican. It looks as if he would be primarying Governor Brad Little next year. Of course, the governor hasn't made any specific announcement yet on his plans, and Mr. Humphreys is going to be with us the entire hour this morning. We have to get to a break in about 1 minute, but before we do, question for people who'd like to know more about your campaign online, where would you send them?
Go to edforidaho.com, and you can learn a little bit more about me. And of course, we're on all the different social media platforms, so look us up.
Yeah, I got to mention, I checked out your Facebook presence too as well. And for people who'd be asking, is that 4 FOR or the number 4?
Either one will work, but FOR is the main one. Yep.
Okay, you were wise enough. Likely, again, this comes back to your demographic. You were wise enough to sew up both of those domains.
Yep. Yep.
Hey, we've got more on the way in just a few minutes. I do want to point out that a little later in the hour, Mr. Humphreys is also available to take some of your telephone calls too, as well, if you've got a question. And we're at 41 right now, and we're coming up on 7:15. The Ag Report and the weather on the way. Bill Colley with you again on News Radio 1310 KLIX and 96.1 FM. And just quickly, got a note, Coach Pete Colson will join us at 8 o'clock this morning. Lori Stewart is going to be joining us at 8:30. She's talking about, and again, it is Mental Health Awareness Month. She's got a lot to unwrap this morning when it comes to that issue. All of those things on the way. Ed Humphreys is a Republican. He's also a candidate for governor of Idaho. We have a primary coming up in May of next year, and then, of course, the general election at the end of 2022. He's joining us this hour on Magic Valley this morning with Bill Colley. It's 7:22 and 42 on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and 96.1 FM. So over the weekend, I had to sit down and write out a check to the state of Idaho as part of my state income tax tab. We were just talking off air, and a lot of people may not know this yet because you're just unveiling a lot of your platform. But if you had your way, we wouldn't have state income tax.
Yes, Bill, that's correct. And I want to explain a little bit the reasoning behind that. What a lot of folks don't know about the state of Idaho is that with our population of 1.8 million people, there are 22 counties in America that have a larger population than our entire state. And while our state may geographically seem larger than most, the reality is the federal government owns over 61% of the land in this state. So our state is really a fraction of the size most people think it is. Now, would you move to a county that county levied an income tax that's higher than 30-odd other states, sales tax that's higher than 31 other states, fuel taxes, property taxes, use taxes for all sorts of... you get the picture. The reality, our state government has 20 departments and over 180 agencies. And that is a very large government for 1.8 million people. And we have to revisit what is the proper role of government and what's the appropriate size for government. But I would tell you would never move to a county that had over 200 government bodies, right? It would be insane.
I moved away from one years ago that had, I think, over 800 taxing entities. That's a true story. And I moved, and I've not looked back in the rearview mirror. I'll put it that way.
Well, and the state here has over 1,200 taxing districts, just so you know. You get what I'm saying. We have a problem in this state. We've been getting overtaxed for a long time. And a lot of people like to talk about budget surpluses, and I agree. We want to have some liquidity in our state finances. We want to have a robust rainy day fund so we don't go through what our state went through during the Great Recession and run out of funds. However, what's happening now is this isn't just having rainy day money. I will get updated numbers next month when the controller releases his annual financial report. But the numbers from almost a year ago now showed our state is sitting, and this is not including a pension and things like that, but sitting on almost $6 billion in cash and short-term investments. Just to give you an idea, I mean, the rainy day fund is usually somewhere between 300 to 400 million, so just a fraction of that. And that money that sits there should, one, be returned to the taxpayers. And I know we just got a tiny fraction of that money back, but the reality is most of that money is going to be used to start new agencies that will start out with some temporary idea and then they'll never go away. And if we want to have a government that is an appropriate size, we got to shrink what we have, and we'll do that by abolishing the income tax, and that'll put about $3,000 more in the pocket of the average retired and working class Idahoan. $3,000 more. I mean, for somebody who's working a full-time job at the average wage in this state, that's about 3.5 extra weeks of pay in a year. That's enormous. And if you believed in the tax policies of Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, and Donald Trump, my tax plan is one for you. You cut taxes, you shrink government, you will juice the economy, our businesses will have greater profits, our workers will have higher wages, and we can begin the process of of weaning ourselves off from all this federal money that subjugates our states to federal agencies.
I wanted to mention Ed Humphreys. Ed Humphreys joining us this morning. He's a candidate for governor. Republican, by the way. He would be likely running in a primary against Governor Brad Little. Hey, we got about a minute and a half before the break, so we may have another hat tossed into the ring today. That's what all the scuttlebutt is. What's your take on the possibility of the lieutenant governor getting into this as well?
Bill, I think she's stirred it up a little bit. I think she's stood for a lot of the right things. It's my opinion, though, that these times do not call for politicians. These times call for regular folks to step up in ways like we never have before. And so I would encourage people to not, for politics not as usual. Let's do something different. And that's what I bring to the table.
And she's been part of this movement that has grown somewhat over the last 4 or 5 years, where you've got a group in the legislature that call themselves, I think, a constitutionalist or a liberty caucus. How do you align with some of them?
Well, right now across America, we have President Trump who breathed life into the America First movement. And so I identify with that movement. That's part of why I got involved, because Donald Trump showed America the dark underbelly of America. And a lot of us woke up and we realizing that something is wrong now and we got to fix it. And I don't think this is the time to leave it up to politicians.
We've got more coming up. We'll take a short break for news. Ed Humphreys with us until 8 o'clock this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and 96.1 FM. Bill Colley on Magic Valley this morning until 10 a.m. And just quickly, if you're going to be with me throughout the morning, we've got Coach Pete Colson joining us at 8 o'clock, and at 8:30 this morning, Lori Stewart has been joining us through the month, every Wednesday through the month of May, talking about issues related to mental health and mental health awareness. We picked that conversation up again with her just after the break at 8:30. Ed Humphreys with us this half hour of the program. He's spending the entire hour between 7 and 8 o'clock with us. He's a Republican, and he's running for governor in Idaho. 736, we're at 40. Bill Colley as well on News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and 96.1 FM. Hey, just before we were going to talk a little bit, we were just talking off air about COVID-19 and the past year, that what people have struggled through with some of the things that came down in the orders from the governor. But before we get there, I've got a question for you that came in from someone who's listening on the app this morning. And I guess, I don't know if this means that they're trying to disqualify you because they ask, where were you born and raised? I know that if that were the case, that both the lieutenant governor and Jim Risch would not be able to serve in Idaho either. But the writer wants to know just some of your background on that.
Yeah, I was born in Arizona. My mother lived in Arizona, and then my father moved to Colorado. And so I grew up both Arizona, Colorado, but I moved to Idaho from the western slopes of Colorado.
And again, we have a lot of people who are transplants in Idaho, and probably more transplants now than native-born Idahoans when you look at the population. That's an astounding figure when you look at the growth and all of that. And so being a native-born Idahoan might still resonate with some people in politics, but we've got to recognize a lot of people who've come here from elsewhere also vote.
Certainly. Well, and I think a lot of people understand that it's just, it brings politics to the most base level, which it's about personalities. The reality, I mean, if you look at some of the heroes in the conservative movement, Ronald Reagan's a great example. Ronald Reagan did wonders for the state of California in the late 60s and early 70s, and he wasn't born and raised in California, right? Well, and similarly, he was an actor that never held elective office, and the first office he ever ran for was governor. And the rest is history. He committed to winning the fight against socialism and communism. And boy, did he win the fight in California. He took the spirit of that to the White House, and his policies, his administration brought about the demise of the Soviet Union. So, I mean, think of it. I mean, if we were all, when Ronald Reagan ran in 1966 in California, if everyone said, oh, he wasn't born here, so We can't hear anything he has to say. I mean, what shape would the world be in today?
Good point. Hey, I got a caller looking to join us too as well. And caller, you're on the air. You're on the air with Ed Humphreys. What's your question?
Yes, I have two questions. One is evidently from what I'm hearing, you have what we consider work ethic. How are you planning on instilling that in our younger generation to get them to understand the power of that work ethic? And also, how do you get the younger generation to understand the power of economics? And you can't just tax these big companies and don't think that they're not going to pass that tax along to you as the everyday American.
Okay, thank you. Two questions.
That's a fantastic question, and I love that she's asking about how we educate young people, because that's the only way that we can carry on our shared values. So the first question you asked about, how do we inculcate work ethic into the rising generation? Well, I'll tell you, one, we have to nip in the bud a major problem that we have in this state and many others, and that is the introduction of Marxist ideology like critical race theory and this new social justice idea. It's garbage. And think of it this way: equity is a word that throughout your entire life meant that you're experiencing the fruits of your labor, right? You work hard, you buy a home, you pay down the mortgage, you build equity in your home. We talk about sweat equity, right? That's private property rights. That's the ability to work hard and to own better and better things, improve your station in life. Well, now equity is being redefined. Equity is now being redefined to mean everybody has the same. Everything's the same. I mean, these people are trying to suck the color out of the world and make it black and white. Everything's the same. How bland, how dull that's not a vision at all. It's a nightmare. So we have to start teaching young people that if you work hard and you play by the rules, you can reach for the very heights of your personal potential. And that's the American dream. That's what we're not teaching anymore. That's why I'm running for governor, because I want to continue to protect and stand for that dream. The second question she asked, remind me, Bill, was about educating youth on what?
Economics, yeah.
On economics, yeah. Well, this is, and just so you know, academia does a really good job at taking something very simple and pure and complicating it and making it complex so that you can introduce all sorts of weird notions. And nobody's better at doing this than leftists. I got a master's in finance, and I wrote my thesis on modern monetary theory. And what we have to understand about economics, it's just simply a collection of individuals living out their lives. We're going on picnics and putting gas in the car. We're all living out our lives, and people can provide value and then receive value for those services and those goods. But now economics is being manipulated to advance a political ideology, and we even see it at the highest levels of our federal government. They literally believe you can just print more money and it'll solve every problem imaginable. But folks, I got to tell you, there's a number of countries in history that tried this strategy before, and I really would prefer to not buy a loaf of bread with a wheelbarrow full of cash.
Hey, I got another question for you. We've got about 2 minutes before the break. This one comes in from someone listening in Buell, and the writer says, where does Ed stand on marijuana? I don't know if you're standing on it, but I think they mean what's your position on, I think, legalization?
Yeah, this is an important question because we're going to have to ask ourselves as a state, what is our core identity? What do we believe in? And so there's a lot of different facets to the marijuana piece, but I'm going to address the one that I think is important. Remember, I grew up in Colorado. I heard all the arguments for marijuana and how it's going to be great and how it's going to give government more and more money so they can grow government bigger and bigger. But at some point, we got to be honest with ourselves here. The answer to society's problems is not more drugs. It's just not the answer. The reality is there's plenty of states people can live in where they can participate in drug culture and all the stuff that comes with it. Let's be different. Let's be Idaho and not introduce that. Let's be a state that celebrates family values. One where when I take my kids to the movies, I don't have to see some marijuana ad from a local drug dealer in the movie theater advertisements. So this is an issue I feel strongly about. I know more about this issue than any other politician because that issue has affected my family and affected my personal life deeply. We cannot keep acting like doing drugs is going to lead us to reach for our personal potential. It won't.
We got to take another short break. We've got the Rush Morning Update on the way in just a moment, but we have more with Ed Humphreys. He's a candidate for governor. He's a Republican. He's making the announcement a good 52 weeks before the primary to get a head start on all of this. That's on the way in just a few minutes. 43 right now. We're at 7:45. Bill Colley with you too on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and 96.1 FM. Ed Humphreys is a Republican and a candidate for governor of Idaho election next year, and he would likely be taking on Governor Brad Little in a primary. We may have some other names cropping up in the next few hours, but at the meantime, we're speaking with Mr. Humphreys for a few more minutes on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and 96.1 FM. Bill Colley with you too until 10 a.m. on Magic Valley this morning. Hey, we were talking off air a couple of times, and we had hoped to get to this about 15, 20 minutes ago. But I was telling you that this was a tough year for a lot of us when everything we went through originally with lockdowns and various orders on the pandemic. And I was expressing to you my frustration with this was that I don't think that the governor, he had a small group of people he was consulting with, but I feel that we didn't take into the wider aspects of really our liberties and other, I don't want to use the word stakeholders, but I thought he could have listened to more people before he made some of his decisions. What's your take on that?
Bill, this is a fantastic question, and it runs, the problem runs deeper than what people realize. And I don't necessarily speak to the lockdowns every time I speak, but I speak to the underpinning of the philosophy that led to them that's dangerous. And this is what I want people to wake up to, is that even elected officials in the Republican Party are starting to adopt socialist and Marxist ideologies. And this is what I mean by that. One of the ideologies being adopted more and more by Republican elected officials is the concept of central planning. And what I want people to know about that, what that essentially means is that, quote, subject matter experts, right? Subject matter experts should dictate the details of our lives and should make decisions for individuals and families because those subject matter experts are more qualified to make decisions. But Bill, that is completely against everything that is America. Socialism and Marxism is not compatible with our country and our Constitution. It isn't. And the moment you adopt that ideology that you shouldn't make decisions for your own family, that some expert should make decisions for your family, that is, as one of my favorite economists would call it, the road to serfdom. And because that is the start of a very dark path, and that is the start of how every totalitarian government has grew up, because the moment you adopt that idea, suddenly you can find somebody who claims they have the answer for every problem, for everybody, and they should be the ones to make decisions for everybody. And what you see is the erosion of individual rights and the promotion of group rights. But let me be very clear. Our rights are given to us from God. and they're given to us individually. Now, we may be a part of a group, right? But the group itself does not have rights individuals do. The moment we adopt these socialist ideas, you will see, like what you've seen, you'll see churches shut down. You will see people arrested for singing hymns in the public square. We're one of the few states that shut down churches but deemed liquor stores essential. Just think of that. Who made that decision? People need to start asking, do the experts have an agenda? And I think Dr. Fauci gives us all the answer. Of course they have an agenda, and they should not be empowered to make decisions for us. We should be empowered to make decisions.
I just heard a comment reference to Austrian economics. So, in case anybody out there missed that, that's what the candidate was referencing with Hayek and the road to serfdom. Hey, we got about 3 minutes to go. I'm going to grab a caller. Caller, you have to make it quick because we're running out of time. Your comment or question for Ed Humphreys?
Well, I think it's important I get to speak to Ed. Ed, I've talked to you a couple times before because you've been on every program in the world, and apparently I listened to them. But this is the thing. You need to come to Minicasia and meet us so we can see you in the face, look you in the eye, and talk to you about whether or not you've been accused of being an operative to dilute the race so a little gets reelected. I need you to tell me to my face that you're not. But okay, I'm going to trust you for the point at this point. Yesterday, I was talking to a person who lives in Emmett, Idaho. He's a neighbor of Governor Little, and he was talking about all the shenanigans that are going on over there with development of land, but Governor Little and his brother. And there's tons of evidence saying that what they've done was very underhanded. And it's just the arrogance of this man. Oh, shucks, I'm just a rancher. I don't trust him at all. He's got to go. I'll hang up. Bye.
Yeah, and Ed, you got about 70, 80 seconds to go.
Well, first, I want to thank him for at least giving the opportunity to hear what I have to say. The Republican Party and conservatives should not start practicing cancel culture where we just throw these baseless, ridiculous allegations around and then tune one another out. So this is what I hope he'll do. I hope he'll go to edforidaho.com and send us a message. And I promise to you, I commit to you that I will come out there in the next 2 to 3 weeks and I will look you in the eye and answer your questions honestly.
That works. And again, the website is just for and Facebook presence, just for anyone who's curious.
It's edforidaho.com, and you can also find us on social media like Facebook, Ed Humphreys for Governor.
Got to thank you for your time. We'll be talking again.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Appreciate it a lot.
Take care, sir. Ed Humphreys joining us this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com, as well as 96.1 FM. Coming up next, Coach Pete Colson. He'll be joining us between 8 and 8:30. It's 44 at 7:59 on Magic Valley this morning.